Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast, healing our community, tribute to National Wellness Month. I always say, people say it better than me. Margaret Wheatley says, there is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about. Today we have a new guest, is Ian Hill, right? Hold on. Are you
You
there?
got it.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay, there you
go.
go. Thank you so much for coming on. Really just appreciate any guests just willing to continue the discussion, share a little bit. Just, the dialogue is just, for me, the passion is that it continues. That's all. So
That's
thank
right.
you so
Well, I,
much.
I appreciate you for inviting me. And as I was saying earlier before when we were talking, I just can't thank you enough for what you're doing and your time and your energy and your effort to provide real, meaningful information and great guests. I mean, we'll find out if I'm any good, but, you know, meaningful information and some real tangible tools for people in
Yeah,
in this challenging time. So thank you.
I appreciate that. It really means a lot because when I was struggling, I just remember one thing that was the hardest was not being heard. So my ministry is about people being heard in a safe place. One of my friends, kind of funny enough, Mr. Rogers. Remember Mr. Rogers back in the day?
Sure.
He had that safe space. I know it was for children, but at the same time, he covered a lot of notable things that weren't really talked about. So I
Yeah.
do have a little inspiration from him, but also just connecting with our communities. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Yeah.
Disclaimer:
Happy to be here.
if you are in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help. Of course, 1-800-273-8255 is National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. But in July, I believe they're going to start the 988, July
Yeah.
16th. And we'll see how that goes. But at the same time, whatever resources out there, wherever part of the world you're at, I do encourage you to find out, because resources and what works for each person is different. It is different. People are complicated, and sometimes the, the answers might be complicated, but the reasons we do it is not so much. It's for the people. Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you. There's this quote from Brandon Marshall, but I couldn't. It's just so large. So let me just. He says, when I first heard the term mental health, the first thing that came to mind was mental toughness, masking pain, hiding it. Let me get this last part. It's just, it didn't fit all there because there's only a set amount of characters. But he says in finishing, he says, keep it inside. That had to be embedded in me since I was a kid. Never show weakness, suck it up, play through it, live through it. Now I realize that mental health means the total opposite. This is Brandon Marshall who quoted this. I was just thinking about athletes. I know you're tied into athletics, and it's just amazing how exceptional athletes can be at their physical, how they could, a lot of times I did track and I realized how much I sucked at track when I went to certain levels. But at the same time, it is humbling, but we kind of denote the physical aspect to everything. So when you hear this quote from Brandon Marshall, what comes to mind for
You
you, Ian?
know, I think that for me, our mental health
Mm-hmm.
drives our physical, emotional, and our temporal well-being.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not mentally healthy, then it's difficult to have those other things in order. And so it took me a long time to come to that conclusion. It
Mm-hmm.
took some ups and downs in life, and it took a dark journey for me to realize that my mental wellness, my
Mm-hmm.
mental capacity, resiliency, and my mental strength had to be a priority. And so I needed to put time and energy into it, just like I might into my physical body. And
Yeah.
so, unfortunately, I guess fortunately, but in some ways, unfortunately, it took a bout of depression. It took
Mm-hmm.
wanting to take my own life. It took
Mm-hmm.
wanting not to be on the planet anymore for me to come to that conclusion.
Yeah. I For me, I like that you said a lot of times we maybe, you know it's not to minimize the physical aspect. They're all tied together, but the mental side is so important. the mental health side. Asking yourself, why do you do what you do? Sometimes you may be in a physical, how you say, you're in a role. You're going to the gym every day. You're feeling good. You're with the, but then it rains. You get an injury. Something happens. What then? I remember reading this one book. The therapist, the counselor, was mentioning real estate. There's this guy who used to sell real estate all the time. He was making so much money. He felt very successful. Then the housing bubble, and then nothing. And then he felt like his value was all that, nothing else. And so I could imagine it'd be similar. We're talking about healing communities, and obviously, as those listening can tell, we're talking about athletes in some ways, competitive sports, and the community that resides in that. A lot of times they just seem, well, they're strong, they're huge, they're doing well. Not so much. We're human. So I want to ask for you, what has your experience been?
I think that you make an excellent point when you speak to identity, right? Is our identity our job? Well, what happens when we lose our job? Is our identity our bank account? Well, what happens when the economy goes south?
Yeah.
So when we put our identity or our value into our vocation, or we put our value into our performance, and then we set ourselves up for a really challenging dynamic, or potentially challenging dynamic. But when we come to the conclusion that we are inherently valuable, 70 billion people have lived on this planet, and there's nobody like you, and there's nobody like me. And if there was 70 billion of some kind of watch, and there was one that was rare and unique, handcrafted and handmade, that watch would be priceless.
Yeah.
Well, the same is true for you and I. We're priceless. No computer in the world can touch our brain. Enough energy within us to light a small city. So when we begin to derive our sense of worth and identity from our inherent value as human beings, then, in my opinion, we can withstand the ups and downs of success and failure. So an athlete, they attach their identity to their sport. They attach their identity to their winning. They attach their identity to their successful performance. And so does everybody around them. Everybody around them celebrates them for their excellence on the field or on the court or on the track or whatever it might be. And we set them up for a real challenge when they're no longer athletes because their value is diminished. In my specific instance, it was about being a middle-aged man and all of a sudden looking around and realizing, hey, all the things that I thought made me worth something, maybe those are hollow. And my identity was stripped from me. And it was a dark, dark journey. So I think when we talk about mental health, we must talk about our value.
Yes.
We are inherently value. If anyone's listening and watching and thinks they have no value, that's just a lie. It's not the truth. You have unbelievable value. You're priceless. Your value is not linked to your performance. And it is about your value.
I also think about, like, I love, competitive sports is wonderful in the way that we go where we think we're like, oh, this is so hard. Those moments when you're working out at the gym, they're like 5 more, and then it's another 5 more, and you're like, what's going on here? But we push ourselves, and competitively, I feel it's very healthy when it comes to building. But at the same time, when you look at, like you say, identity, and when you look at the idea of how we look at ourselves in our sports or whatever we're good at, it's not static. It keeps changing. We get older. It doesn't. I think Albert Einstein said it this way. He said, people always say I'm smart. I'm paraphrasing. I'm smart, but really, I just stayed longer with the problems. That's it. It's interesting. It's interesting that perseverance is a lot of times coined, but a lot of times we're like, I don't have this right now, and when I want it. Sports, you get this new signed player. Everyone's like, oh, excited for this new player, and then he gets injured. I can imagine how damaging that must feel, trying to prove yourself, and then you can't. And then I feel having a good I don't know, team. I can't imagine good members of your team kind of encouraging you, finding the help. If I need help, if I feel bad, I can go to a therapist. I can go see someone, because this is hard. It's over with, like, recognizing the issue you're in, but also having the support. I guess that's the hope. What have you seen? What has your experience?
I think having a team around you, caring, loving people who will stand by you through difficult times. But often we don't have that.
No.
Often when we have failure, when we stumble, and whether that was through our personal choices or through life circumstances or a combination of both, often people don't want to be around someone who's going through a difficult time.
Yeah.
No one wants to be around the loser. Everybody wants to be around the winner. And so we find ourselves alone, and we find ourselves isolated, or we self-isolate because we look around and say, who would want to be with me? And so I think it is important to find those caring, loving individuals. But if you don't have one, or if you don't have some, then what do you do? And my recommendation is this, that you seek out individuals that will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
That will love you enough to tell you the truth about where you're at, not enable your negative behaviors, not tell you what you want to hear, but people that will tell you the truth, because the truth can then allow you to create a critical path to your success. People telling you what you want to hear won't do that.
Yeah.
So you're right. I think in an athletic setting, we have our teammates to support us. In life setting, sometimes we don't have family, we don't have friends. Yeah. And in some instances, we actually drive them away. Yeah. So then how do we turn it around? First, we look introspectively within ourselves and ask ourselves, why do I keep driving people away? And what are my patterns of thinking and behavior and communication that would make them leave? And then find that one loving, caring individual that will tell me the truth.
Yeah.
And then from that, we can build a foundation of trust, and we can start to turn the thing around.
Yeah. I think, like, just thinking about American football, there's a time limit of how long you could be in American football as a professional. It's limited, you know, especially depending on the position you play. And I would say, knowing that reality, and like what you're saying, I totally agree, is that I the idea is that this quote kind of says it in a weird way. Who is happier, man who braved through the storm and lived a storm of life and lived, or he who stayed securely on shore and merely existed? Sometimes we try to embalm or kind of make whatever wonderful moment in your sport career or whatever, and that's it. My happiest day is 10 years ago, and that's it. And I feel that can be problematic moving forward, because life is not static. We keep changing and we keep growing. And I feel that go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think we're the only Western society is the only society in the history of mankind that tried to create this mindset that all of a sudden we made it.
Yeah.
I hit the lottery, I made it.
Yeah.
I touched the pass, I made it. I had a YouTube video go viral, I made it. Yeah. I made it, and now I don't have to do anything ever again. There's no other society in the history of mankind that has that mindset. Instead, the mindset is that we're constantly growing, we're constantly evolving until the day that we die. Well, as soon as you reframe and say that life is a journey, that there is no point in time where you're going to wake up one day and it's going to be, I made it. Then all of a sudden the bumps and the ups and the downs and the hills and the valleys become a natural flow of what is expected life to be. And we stop comparing ourselves to some Instagram influencer. We stop comparing ourselves to somebody we see on TV. We stop comparing ourselves to others, and we just start to say to ourselves, hey, you know what? There's going to be the ups and downs of life. There's going to be the ins and outs. It's not going to be a hockey stick when I'm going to make it someday, and it's just going to shoot.
Yeah.
And now, this failure is actually a tremendous opportunity for learning.
Yeah.
Oh, this setback actually teaches me mental strength and mental resiliency.
Mm.
And this stumble actually taught me for my next success.
Yeah.
And then we realize that failure, setbacks, challenges, and difficulties are the natural process of evolution, of our growth and our maturation, not something to be looked at as a negative, but
Yeah.
something to be used as a springboard to our full potential.
Yeah, and I'm totally with you when we think about the journey, when we're allowing ourselves time to reflect. It's funny, I say this a lot. I work in the mental health field, and one of the things I say to my clients is accountability is not a bad word if it's a safe place. If you know what, when you build that kind of foundation around you, and sometimes you're not afforded a safe place, but that's what I talk about, resources. There's so many different resources out there, you know, social supportive resources that you can build on. What do you like to do? One thing that I really find not funny, but it's noticeable, even my own journey, the things we love the most, things that we're more creative in, usually collect dust on the side. Our guitars, everything we used to play, because you know, creativity kind of looks inward. It looks at yourself. You look at yourself, especially, and I feel that creative element can be cathartic. You know, journaling. You know, journaling. People journal. People sing. People do whatever. Do music. It is all, I feel, part of the recovery journey, you know, whatever that may look like to the individual. I say this, value is a lot of times on value. We use the word value. We're like, oh, I value this thing, but we look outward, not inward. The one thing that, you know, how about valuing your time? How about saying to yourself, I need a little bit space. I need to set boundaries. Well, usually the people who have the biggest problem of you setting boundaries are the ones you should set boundaries from, because the fact of the matter is you want to surround yourself, and it's not always the case, but you know, you set parameters where the people around you actually want you, may not understand, they probably will not understand what you're going through, but they want the best for you. They would like to see you succeed at the very least, the ones. And I feel it's not that they have it all figured out or even know what you're going through. It's just having that support, and understanding support is different, um, with different people, friendships, families is all kind of different culturally, context wise. You know, I'm half Asian, half Korean, half Puerto Rican. It's confusing. You know, you gotta have a lot of cultural influences when it comes to that. I'm gonna ask you, throwing it back to you. Let me see. Do you feel sports and mental health can work effectively together? And if so, how?
I think sports can be a vehicle to develop resiliency. It can be a vehicle to develop mental strength. It can be a vehicle to create the intangible tools that we need to be successful. We also know that physical activity creates the release of really, really good chemicals in our brain. And
Yeah.
we know physiologically that it's a very positive thing. But like anything else, when used inappropriately, it can be challenging, difficult, and it can be destructive. So I think that sport and mental health do go hand in hand. I mean, as you know, and your listeners may not, I'm attempting to be the oldest man to play NCAA Division I college football. And I'm doing that to bring light to the alarming suicide rate amongst middle-aged men, who are 70% more likely to commit suicide than any other segment of the population. Well, why college football? I'll be 58 years old when I play college football. Why? Because there is a coming together of our mental capacity, of the development of our resiliency and our mental capabilities and our mental health and sport. It has been such since the beginning of time, since the Greeks. The reason the Greeks didn't invite create the Olympic Games as a part of a sport construct. They created it as a part of a social construct.
Yeah.
It was about religious activity as well. So you look at cultures throughout history, sport was a lot more than just about $1 billion contract. It was
Yeah.
never about that, in fact.
Yeah.
So I do think that sport can be a contributor. The reason that I selected this world record, which will be my second, was because middle-aged men watch college football.
Yeah.
And what's better way to engage middle-aged men than some crazy old guy trying to be a Division One, NCAA Division One long snapper?
Mhm.
And people can go and follow what they want. Go to seasontosavealife.org, and they can follow the journey, and they can get tools and resources there as well through our partner organizations and agencies. But we knew that sport would engage people, and we knew it would create a platform for the dialogue around mental wellness, the dialogue around, and destigmatize the conversation of specifically men's mental health.
Yeah. And I feel that it's funny because people may be listening, they're like, well, there is a lot of some of the training that some of these sports require. It's like a lot of resilience, but the thing is, that's just one avenue when you're physical, but people don't realize times, and that's where the destigmatization has, that mental health needs as much as attention, or even more sometimes, when it comes to kind of having that right balance. Because if I'm good at, let's say, I'm very resilient in one thing, doesn't always translate to mental health. And a lot of times it's just kind of assumed because this person is amazing, those marathon runners or anything like that, they may be like, wow, she has such determination, and in some ways they're very strong mentally, but at the same time, if there's disconnect, if they don't feel appreciated, there's some injury or something, some setback, and mental health is not kind of put in the forefront, it can be a stumbling block moving forward in their journey.
Well, I think that the first thing is that we've used this big term, this overarching term of mental health.
Yeah.
Are we talking trauma? Are we talking depression? Are we talking anxiety? Are we talking other invisible barriers? Are we talking that they are created through a chemical imbalance in your brain? Or are we saying that they were created through life circumstances that created certain patterns of behavior, thinking, and communication that no longer serve us well? So I think when we make a blanket statement, mental health, we get ourselves in trouble. Like any other malady in the world, when we say homelessness, well, there's a whole lot to homelessness. There's a whole lot to drug abuse. There's a whole lot to other challenges. But I think specifically when we're talking about middle-aged men, and you look at the contributing factors to the declining mental wellness of a middle-aged man. First, testosterone goes in the tank. Secondly, most of them don't eat well, which is a contributing factor to depression. Third, they're probably not in good shape, which just takes the testosterone thing and makes it worse, right? And then finally, they're probably many, I don't want to say probably, many come to a conclusion at middle age of, is this it? And then you add to that a little bit of drug, a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of gambling, a little bit of sex, a divorce here, a failed business there. And then next thing you know, a gentleman's in a rut. And then sometimes that rut grows to real depression. And unfortunately, because we haven't given space for the conversation, a man thinks he's got to pull himself out. But there's nothing to pull on, because the testosterone he used to be able to pull on can't pull on that anymore. The things that he thought he was able to do when he was younger, he can't do those things anymore. And then all of a sudden, a man starts to question his capacity as a man. And so does everybody around them. And you create this incredible construct that leads to, tragically, men taking their lives every day. Think about this, and I know you know this. 23 veterans every day taking their lives in the United States of America. 132 people taking their lives every day in the United States of America. 3,287 people attempting suicide every day in the United States of America. And that's just reported. That doesn't include all of the people that don't report or don't end up at the hospital or don't end up here or there or where. So at the end of the day, when you take a step back at a 500-foot level, it would make sense that people are at the end of themselves.
Yeah.
And then you add a pandemic to it, and it just exasperates.
Yeah.
So what I say is this: hey, if you're a man right now that's struggling and you're broken and you're hurting and you've got nowhere to turn to, one, if you're in crisis, do what was said at the beginning. That suicide prevention lifeline. If you didn't catch that phone number, you can go to seasontosavealife.org. It's literally in the middle of the website, big bold.
Mhm.
If you're not in that level of crisis, but you're struggling and you're trying to just figure it out, like I was just trying to figure it out, go to seasontosavealife.org. Click resources. There's surveys you can take. There's explorations you can go through to kind of start to get a sense of where you're at. And then there's a directory literally of doctors and therapists that you could call, and they will connect with you. It's awesome. Just click resources. And then finally, and this was my situation, there was just no one I could talk to. Not that there weren't people to talk to. They were just people I didn't think I could talk to.
Yeah.
Because they all had images of who I was and what I was.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in that position where you just don't feel comfortable telling anybody what you're going through, call me. Literally just call me. 775-298-1014. 775-298-1014. That's my personal cell phone. Because I don't want any man to go through what I went through where they don't have anybody to talk to. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. Just some crazy old man trying to play college football. But I'll listen. And I know a lot of doctors. And I know a lot of professionals. And we'll get you connected to somebody. Yeah. And ultimately, I'm not your best resource. Someone in your community is a better resource to me. But if I'm the first, if I need to walk with you for the first few steps on your journey, I got you, bro. I got you. I'll walk with you for a couple steps, and then we'll pass you off to someone who's more appropriately equipped and better positioned to support you. But if you need someone for that first 2 steps, I got you.
That's wonderful. I want to also segue. My wife has this book. It's untranslatable words, it's in Chile. I'm not even gonna attempt it, but it's what you're saying. A silent acknowledgement or understanding between two people, or amongst middle-aged men who are both wishing or thinking the same thing. You kind of already beat me to the punch. You broke the silence, sharing. What would you like to share in regards to mental health, and primarily about those who feel unheard? Those who their body's changing, things are changing, things are not static. You may not be able to do the things you used to do back in high school or college, but that's okay. That is totally okay. And the thing is, when you have that moment of clarity and you start piecing, this Chinese proverbs like, how do you move a mountain? One stone at a time. One little stone. It's a proverb. It's like little by little. But during that journey, it's nice to have someone having that connection, having that resource.
Well, a journey is always easier when we go on it together. And if I came to your house and said, hey, we're going to go for a hike today. And you knew we were going on it together, it would be a lot easier.
Life is best lived shared. Life is
I don't. Unfortunately, we've created a construct of isolation and independence.
Yeah.
And we celebrate rugged individualism, and I agree with that. I live out west, so I'm all for rugged individualism. But I think we were designed to have, and we were designed to have symbiotic relationship with those around us. We were built for community, and we're built to do things together.
Yeah.
So if you need somebody, but you're afraid to tell the people around you, we just gave a number of different ways that you can connect with somebody to begin that turnaround. And as you just pointed out, that turnaround starts, well, first, I would say that turnaround starts with removing the shame and the guilt. If you're not completely satisfied with your life, then let's do something about changing it. Notice I didn't say it was good or bad, right or wrong, just if you're not completely satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
And if your patterns of thinking and your patterns of communication and your patterns of behavior aren't serving you well, then
Mm-hmm.
let's work to change them. That's the beauty of neuroplasticity. We can change these things. And there's hope. And finally, that's the main reason I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm.
When on July 23rd, I have a tryout at the University of North Alabama,
Mm-hmm.
Division I school. And July 29th, I have a tryout at the University of Idaho.
Mm.
And I'm going to play college football. And when I
Mm.
do, people are going to look at it and they're going to say, holy crap, if that crazy old man can do that, I can
Mhm.
overcome my challenge. Now, that may not resonate with you if you're watching or listening right now and you have a mountain of debt,
Mhm.
or your kids won't talk to you anymore,
Mhm.
or the person who said they loved you ran off with somebody else,
Mhm.
or you lost your business.
Mhm.
Okay, I get it. It may not resonate with you. All I'm asking you to do is just follow the journey. Watch what we do and how we do it,
Mhm.
because it could be a roadmap for you to turn your circumstances and your impossible. Turn your impossible. What I'm trying to do is impossible,
Mm.
but we're going to do it. And when we do, it'll be a roadmap for other people's impossible.
Mm. And, one of the books, one of the authors, Viktor Frankl, really one thing he really kind of, it stuck in my brain when I read it years ago, was when he was observing people were giving half their loaves of bread or in the concentration, whatever they got, and someone would say, well, you're giving away your sustenance, but the thing that he noticed, and I mentioned this in various ways, but he said that those individuals, I'm paraphrasing, felt there was another day ahead. The others didn't. And I think, as simple as it is, I encourage those, that, look ahead. Your best moments you could be nostalgic of those good moments. You could remember fondly of those moments, but I feel the hope I have for those listening, and the hope I have, whatever you're going through, is to look forward. Look, have hope for the next day. Some of the little steps, maybe just getting out of bed. Some of those little steps may be so small, but they all add up at the end of the day. I just want to say thank you, Ian, for joining us today and on the topic of healing our community. I think community, if you're introvert, extrovert, or in between, we all need to communicate. We all need to connect. We're not islands. We just may connect differently, and that's okay. You just have to find ways that work for you. Thank you, Ian, so much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
No problem. I want to remind those who are watching Revive Ministries, you could reach us through the website. There's various other platforms like YouTube, Facebook. This is goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving you with this last quote from Coretta Scott King. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members.